if you're interested in finding out more, please send an expression of interest. Just send an email to admin@galwayfilmcentre.ie, or just contact the Film Centre. In the next number of weeks, we are going to be putting a call out to make two 26 minutes films, and the budgets will be probably around 30 to 35,000 each for those, and they're going to follow areas of research which Claire will outline some of the areas of research that Cúram are doing. In February, we would hope to have an open day where the scientists can present their work, and there'd be a chance for filmmakers to meet them and to hear about their work. And then we'll be putting a call for filmmakers to essentially pitch to us, probably towards middle to the end of March. And we're going to select 2 films and give them the budgets, and we would hope to have the films finished by the end of this year, roughly by November. We're in Screen Science Foundation Ireland have a very strong relationship with RTE, our existing relationship with RTE. So we're also in discussion about RTE, about broadcast. So we're just at the early stages of those discussions. So this is what this session is about. So we're giving you a preview that we're going to be putting the call out for these 2 films in the next number of weeks. So I'll pass you over to Claire, who can tell you a little bit more about Cúram and the work that they do.
Good morning. So I'm sure you weren't expecting a science lecture, but Cúram are the science partners in this project called Science on Screen. So this morning we just wanted to announce the project, like Declan said, but we'll be giving more information in the coming weeks. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background on what Cúram is, what kind of research we do, and what science we're talking about. So, like I said, we're the National Centre for Research in Medical Devices, and we're funded by Science Foundation Ireland, and we're based in Galway at NUIG. And Ireland is actually a global leader. I don't know how many people know this, a global leader in medical device technologies. It employs 24,000 people in Ireland, and in Galway it's about a third of that. So if you walk down Shop Street, you'll probably 1 in 10 people you meet is associated with the medtech sector. And while we appreciate that, not a lot of people know how much science is happening in Ireland, and that it's at world-class level, or that Ireland, as such a small country, has such a huge impact on the global stage in healthcare. And everyone's familiar with the stories, like last week in the Irish Times, this idea, or the stories about the overcrowding in hospitals, and stories about patients being left on trolleys and hallways in hospitals for hours on end. And one of the reasons that our health system is so burdened is because we're all getting older, and as everybody knows, and that's a good thing. But more of us are getting older and living into old age. And while that's great, we want to make sure that the quality of life for people at a later age is good and remains high. But for people who suffer from chronic illness, that's not always the case. And so they say by 2050, one person in 10 will be over the age of 80 years old. And what we do at Cúram, I suppose, just to give a background of bringing it back to us, is we're working to improve and enhance existing medical devices. Like everyone's heard of medical devices, something like a stent or a pacemaker. People probably know people who have had knee replacements or hip replacements, things like that. But we're also working on developing the next generation of medical devices, so starting to work with things like biomaterials, which are materials that can be engineered and used in the body to help it repair itself. So we're looking at developing the next generation of medical devices. And I'm not going to go into the science in too much detail this morning, but these are the areas we would look at developing medical devices for. So we look at heart disease, and we look at Parkinson's disease, neural diseases. We look at diabetes, osteoarthritis. One of our researchers, for example, I don't know how many people here suffer from back pain, but 60% of back pain is caused by a degeneration in your discs. And usually the solution at the moment is to have surgery to fuse your vertebrae if that's the issue. And that's hugely traumatic for the patient. So one of our researchers, for example, is looking at developing this hydrogel that you can just inject into the spine. It'll fill the gaps where the disc was and carry out the same function as your disc would have originally, solving the problem. So we're moving towards a different type of medicine, if you like. We also work with stem cells and regenerative medicine. One of our projects is looking at building the world's first 3D prototype of a tendon, so that if you have sporting injuries in your tendons and ligaments, you can look at actually regrowing your own. So there's lots of examples and different areas of research within Cúram looking at different parts of the body. Parkinson's is another disease that affects 10 million people worldwide, and we're looking at, in Cúram, finding cures rather than actually just treating symptoms for these diseases, which is what is done at the moment. As Declan said, we will be having an information day on site in NUI Galway with our lead researchers, who, for any filmmakers who are interested, will break down the research, look at why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and who it's for. And you'll be able to ask questions, and we'll be doing a workshopping session around scientific storytelling. So that's our role in this project. There's a whole range of research that we're doing here in Galway, but we also have partners nationwide. So we have 7 academic partners across Ireland. And as the partners in this project, we want to open up the laboratories, provide access to our researchers, and basically facilitate you working with them to find the stories around the science. So when we provide that kind of scientific edge, we're looking for creative, imaginative input from filmmakers to come in and find the stories that you want to tell around what's happening here in the labs. Just to point out as well, as Declan said, we're not looking for a marketing video to just document the work that Cúram is doing. We're looking at inspiring filmmakers to tell stories that incorporate aspects of the science or the research. But it's up to you to find the individual theme or the specific theme of your own film. So as Declan said, we're looking for 2 filmmakers, 2 26-minute films. We've up to from 30 to 35,000 per film, and we'll provide the access to the scientific content, if you like. Rough timeline of the project. Again, we're opening applications probably after that information day at the college. We'll be looking for people to describe their approach to the project, and we're hoping to have selected filmmakers at the end of March, starting in April and delivering by October, November this year. What we can do today, or what you can do today if you're interested, is actually email education.galwayfilmcentre@gmail.com. Is that right?
Any Galway Film Centre
info email
will get you there.
And if you want to just register your interest for the info day, you'll be contacted and told all the details. It'll also be on the websites for both organisations in the coming weeks. And ultimately, I guess where we want to go with this project, and Margie will talk a little bit more about Science Foundation Ireland, we want to engage as wide an audience as possible. So there's a couple of options for distribution. We'll be working with you on that. But ultimately, what we'd love to see, if this project rolls on further than this year, this is the first year and it's a pilot project, we would love to see the development of a Science on Screen festival that could feature Irish-made content and science fiction and any other genres around that area that we could. So that's it from me on the science, and I'm going to hand you over to Margie, who will talk a little bit more about funding.
Thanks a million, Claire. Good morning. I'm laughing. You didn't expect to have a science thing. We certainly didn't expect to be talked to by a civil engineer. But that was many moons ago. I've been working a long time in the areas of, I suppose, public engagement. And now that's my responsibility in Science Foundation Ireland. I head up that activity, which Claire will be very active in all of the research centres as well through Science Foundation Ireland's work. But maybe you haven't had any involvement with Science Foundation Ireland in the past, maybe you aren't that aware of what we do. So just to give you a very quick snapshot, we are the funding agency in Ireland to invest taxpayer money in research in the areas of science, tech, engineering and maths. And we invest about 150 to 160 million of your money every year into research. And I think maybe whenever I put that number out, it really opens people's eyes as to why we think it's very important that the research that we're investing in is responding and is engaged with the society that lives in Ireland. I suppose that's why organisationally SFI has just 4 goals, which is pretty succinct for an organisation with a budget like that. But one of them, so a quarter of what we are gearing up to do by 2020, is that Ireland will have the most engaged and scientifically informed public. That's kind of a very lofty aspiration, and of course when you bring an engineer into the equation, it's like, well, how do we do that and what bar are we measuring it against? So last year we did a bit of research, a pretty significant bit of research actually, a very much nationally representative survey and focus groups on the Irish public to assess what was their attitude and the value that they put in science, tech and engineering in their lives and in Irish society. And 49% of them told us that they felt informed of what was going on. But 71% said that more often than not, the areas of science, tech or engineering are just too complex or too specialised for them to get involved in the conversation. And when you look at Claire's touched on our ageing population, you look at the flooding recently, climate change, you look at all of these things that are intricately part of the fabric of our everyday lives. If we've 71, so almost 3 out of 4 people who are walking down Shop Street feel like, well, that's somebody else's thing to deal with, I'm just living the consequences of it. We have to do something about that. Similar sized economies like New Zealand and Denmark, would have similar population bases and similar type of economies, they're down at the 35%. Their people are telling them, we get it, we feel like we have a part to play in the conversation and the people will listen to us. So I suppose when we see figures like that, we realise that we can't just talk to the converted. We have to look outside the box as to what way are we going to engage with the public. And that, I suppose, has been the inspiration and the motivation around broadcast strategy for Science Foundation Ireland. Declan Muse spoke of our partnership we have in place, a joint initiative, a pilot project with RTE, which started last May. We've already had 2 calls through that, and we'll be seeing Stefan RT1 in the prime time schedule come kind of springtime. Had some really good interaction with them then also during Science Week, so we had some good presence across the schedule on RT1 and 2. But to complement that, I suppose, so we went about that in terms of trying to engage the disengaged. So the objectives of the RT initiative was, we don't want to do a science programme where the board of SFI will be the viewership. In fact, whenever I present on this to our board, I say, if you guys are watching it, we've probably not done it right. We really want the broadcast material that we're helping to fund and to catalyse to reach out to people who normally would switch channels. In terms of then, we obviously didn't want to just put it all into one pot and to just work with RTE, although that gave us a really good viewership reach. So within the Discover funding call, which is a public engagement funding process that we have, and that opens every springtime and decisions are made every autumn, and we have an international review panel who come over and review and decide, I suppose, score projects against, and that's where our funding decisions come from. Within our Discover funding call, we opened it to broadcast projects this year, and the Science on Screen was a successful award out of that, amongst a number of other smaller specific programmes. So I suppose it's just to give you an insight into why Science Foundation Ireland is doing this, what funding opportunities are there, and also to, I suppose, reinforce our support of this. Our objective as to be involved in Science on Screen for SFI is, as we said, to try and get the people who feel like this just has nothing to do with them, it's not part of their lives, to engage. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions? I think it's a really exciting opportunity for filmmakers to. What I'd like to see is to do for science what the previous panelists did for poetry. Is it to make it accessible? Because it's a very a lot of people are turned off by science, and it's sort of that's somebody else's that's somebody else's problem, or that's somebody else's life. It's not mine. And I think that the science that's going on in Cúram is very exciting. It's very cutting edge, and it really, I can easily see it being tied into human stories, because we are living longer. We're all facing the challenges, and it's quite remarkable the possibilities of the research. Some of it is almost like science fiction. It's very exciting, and it's amazing. It's happening here in Galway. This is these people are world leaders. So I think it's 30 to 35 grand. I think it's a decent enough fund. There is a very exciting challenge in terms of the subject matter. There are many areas of research that are very exciting. It's very challenging for a filmmaker to make a film that's that gets under the skin of the research and can visualize that and can show that. So I think there's a very creative challenge, and how do you make something very complex? A film we brought last year, we brought Walter Murch to Galway, who was one of the greatest editors on the planet, and he edited a science film called Particle Fever. And if you've never watched Particle Fever, you just got to watch Particle Fever. He took the Hadron Collider thingamajiggy onto the ground in Switzerland, and he, which is how that works and what it does is it's a very complex thing. And by the end of the documentary, you feel as if you somehow understand it. He used animation, visuals, but just the editing of it is just absolutely astounding. Now we don't have that level of budget, but what we're looking for something special. We don't want this to be no disrespect, but we don't want this to be nationwide for 26 minutes. We want to do something very exciting, and we want to build on this as well. We would hope that this would be our first year of a relationship with the Science Foundation, and we can build it, and we can go on to do bigger and better things with perhaps with RTE, or perhaps if there are other broadcasters in the room that are interested. We'd be interested to talk to you. So we just got the approval just before Christmas. So we're finalising the application process. So people will essentially there'll be an open day, probably a Saturday in February in Cúram. So you can come along to that and meet the scientists and hear firsthand exactly what the areas of research. And then you'll have a couple of weeks then to come up with a proposal, and there'll be an application process and probably an interview process, and we're going to select 2 filmmakers. So that's it really. Yes?
Before this meeting in February, is there a list, or is there somewhere that people could access to find out what exactly has been researched, or what is it?
Yeah, so we'll be giving links to the different our website, cúramdevices.ie, gives an overview of the research that happens, but we'll also be pointing people in directions to specific projects, and that'll be all on our website in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So can you document a story that has nothing to do with the research that you know about, that's out in the world of results of science?
I think for this one we're going to, I suppose, tie it back to some aspect of the research, but I mean, we're talking probably, the range is so broad, from everything from, a scientist's lifestyle to, curing Parkinson's disease. It's a really wide range. I think for this year we want to tie it into some aspect.
If you know somebody very interesting somewhere else out in the country doing something.
Well, I think, the way this came about is that this is a partnership between Galway Film Centre and Cúram. We applied to Science Foundation Ireland for the funding, so it's a joint project between us and Cúram. So I think the starting point would be the Cúram's research. That could be broader, and that could go in, we don't know where that could go, but I think that would have to be the starting point. That Cúram's would be the start of it.
And the open day in February, that's, roughly middle of February?
Probably no.
Towards the end of February, probably. We're thinking. We're trying to confirm the 27th, but we need to make sure all of the researchers are available that day. So we'll confirm that as soon as possible. And like I said, that will be just a day for you to get a handle on what area is most interest to you as well.
Sure.
What was the name of the website again?
Let me go back.
Cúram Devices.
Cúramdevices.ie.
Yeah, if you have any questions, just basically contact Galway Film Centre next week, and if you want to call in and have a chat, we'd be happy to tell you.
But that day, in terms of the actual research, I know this morning I gave a very quick description, but it's not meant to be the information that you base a pitch on. This info day is where you get a chance to actually meet the people and find out the stories yourself behind the research and the purpose behind it.